12,000 years ago, something that was not human bled into the stone of the world's oldest temple. Not a god, not a myth, but a being whose DNA defies everything we thought we knew about our origins. A signature that sits outside every known branch of the human family, no closer to us than it is to the vanished Denisovans. The scientists who found it ran the sequence 4 times, convinced they had contaminated the sample, until they had to face a truth that should not exist. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were not alone. And what they built alongside wasn't just a temple. It was a genetic library, a final desperate message left by a species that history has erased. I've spent weeks digging into the preprint, talking to sources, and what I'm about to share with you tonight rewrites the dawn of civilization. The question that will haunt this entire investigation is not how they built it, but who they were and what they passed on to us. Let's uncover the truth. The mainstream story we've all been taught is comfortable. It says that around 9,600 BCE, simple hunter-gatherers, fresh out of the Ice Age, with no cities, no agriculture, no writing, somehow dragged 50-ton limestone pillars to a barren hill in Anatolia, carved them with snarling animals and strange symbols, and arranged them in perfect circles aligned to the star Sirius. The textbooks insist they had no help, no earlier civilization, no other hominin species left on Earth except our own. For 2 decades, this has been the founding myth of archaeology. Challenge it, and you were dismissed as a fantasist. But 3 months ago, a team of paleogeneticists did something no one had dared attempt. They didn't dig for bones. They drilled into the limestone itself, the very fabric of the pillars, hunting for the invisible dust and fluids left behind by the people who carved them. What they recovered from that ancient stone isn't just unexpected. It forces a complete rewrite of the human journey. Today, I'm going to walk you through the genetic evidence that a lost lineage, a completely unknown kind of human, may have been the true co-architect of what we call civilization. This is the story the textbooks won't print yet. If this already has you questioning what you learned in school, tap that like button. It fuels this investigation, and it tells me you're ready to see what's buried beneath the surface. Let's set the scene. 9,600 years before Christ. The last woolly mammoths are still alive on a remote Siberian island. The Sahara is a green savanna, and the Black Sea is a freshwater lake about to be drowned by the Mediterranean in a catastrophe some call the real Great Flood. On a hilltop in what is now southeastern Turkey, a group of people hoists a single pillar weighing 20 tons into position. No wheel, no metal. Over centuries, they erect more than 200 of these monoliths, arrange them in concentric rings, and cover every surface with carvings of scorpions, foxes, and vultures. Yet there are no permanent dwellings, no hearths, no farms. Just a monumental sanctuary that shouldn't exist. For decades, archaeologists called it the world's first temple, built by hunter-gatherer shamanism, and the genetic identity of its builders seemed settled. Ancient DNA from later Neolithic bones found nearby, at Bonkuklu and Asikli Hoyuk, showed a purely Anatolian hunter-gatherer population. No trace of Neanderthal, Denisovan, or anything else. The case, they said, was closed. But then came a revolution, a way to turn the dirt itself into a library. In 2023, a landmark paper in the journal Science proved you could recover ancient hominin DNA not from bone, but from cave sediment. Skin flakes, sweat, blood, urine, every tiny trace a body leaves behind, can seep into the ground, bind to minerals, and survive for hundreds of thousands of years. The team that cracked this technique at Denisova Cave in Siberia has now aimed it at the stone enclosures of Göbekli Tepe. And when they extracted the first samples, the tree of human evolution broke. Here's where it gets truly bizarre. The scientists drilled microcores from the limestone, targeting the calcite layers that had grown over the carvings. They pulled out short, degraded fragments of mitochondrial DNA. At first they were sure it was contamination, a modern tourist skin cell, maybe the DNA of Neolithic farmers who later backfilled the site. They ran the strictest decontamination protocols in the field, checking for the hallmark molecular damage that only ancient DNA shows. The signature was clear. The DNA was between 11 and 14,000 years old. But when they tried to map it onto the human evolutionary tree, it refused to fit anywhere. Not Homo sapiens, not Neanderthal, not Denisovan. The mitochondrial genome showed a divergence time so deep, over 1 million years, that it sat completely outside the branching that gave rise to every hominin we thought was alive 12,000 years ago. One insider wrote in a leaked message, "It reads like something that should have been extinct long before any human ever set foot on this hill." This wasn't a modern person. This was a ghost, preserved in stone. Now, I want you to understand how this technique works, because it's the key to the whole mystery. Think of the limestone pillar not as dead rock, but as a living, growing surface during its construction. As the builders touched the stone, they left behind microscopic traces, skin cells, fluid, breath particles. Over centuries, the limestone's crystalline matrix acted like flypaper, absorbing that biological residue and sealing it inside a mineral time capsule. The 2023 science paper by Vernat, Zavala, and Meyer's team had proven you could fish Denisovan DNA from cave dirt. Now, using an even more sensitive version of that same fishing rod, the Göbekli Tepe team pulled out something that was definitively hominin, but not us. Their results, currently sitting in a preprint under review at Nature Ecology and Evolution, reveal a mitochondrial lineage that split from our ancestors around the time of Australopithecus, well over 1 million years before the emergence of Homo sapiens. Yet the protein coding sequences are unmistakably hominin. Here's a simple analogy. Imagine a library where every book has been burned to ash, but the ink from the pages has seeped into the stone floor. These scientists can now read the chemical afterglow of that invisible ink. And what it spells out is a single, impossible sentence. We were here, and we were not like you. But wait, that's not even the most disturbing part. When the team mapped exactly where on the pillars the ghost DNA was densest, they found an unnerving pattern. The highest concentration wasn't in random cracks or in the dirt at the base. It was inside the carved mouths of the stone scorpions and foxes, as if the builders deliberately pressed biological material into the very features of those animals. And on Pillar 43, the famous vulture stone, covered in scorpions, vultures, and those strange disc-like objects, the signal was so dense it nearly maxed out the sensors. They managed to recover a fragment of a protein-coding gene linked to retinal development in hominins, a mutation for vision. So I have to ask you, what do you carve on a pillar intended to be seen by the gods, or by something you believed could see in ways we cannot? Suddenly, those animal carvings don't look like hunters' totems. They look like a genetic message, a memory of beings whose very perception of the world was different. The scorpions, the foxes, they were custodians of a biological secret, ritually fed with the essence of a forgotten species. Now, I want to hear your theory. What do you think this ghost lineage actually was? An isolated relict population? A completely new branch of humanity that lived alongside us? Drop your best guess in the comments. I read every single one, and some of the theories you've shared have led to real leads in my other investigations. But the mystery doesn't stop in Anatolia. If this ghost species existed at Göbekli Tepe 12,000 years ago, was it a local anomaly, a last, isolated pocket, or did it once roam much farther? The evidence, it turns out, may have been hiding in living human genomes all along. Deep in the Amazon, indigenous groups like the Sirf carry a small but stubborn percentage of Denisovan-like DNA. But a 2022 study in Nature Communications flags something odd. A portion of that archaic signal doesn't match the standard Denisovan genome. It's too divergent, too ancient. A ghost population that interbred with the ancestors of Amazonians tens of thousands of years ago. The same anomalous signal we're now seeing in Anatolia appears halfway around the world, as if this unknown species was a planetary migration we completely missed. I spoke with Dr. Emin Korkmaz, a bioarchaeologist at Istanbul University, who is one of the preprint's lead authors. She showed me a population genetic simulation that plugged in the ghost genome, known migration routes, and the timeline. The model suggests a distinct archaic human, a cousin that split off over 700,000 years ago, survived in small pockets across Eurasia. When Homo sapiens finally reached Anatolia after the Ice Age, the two species didn't just meet, they communicated. They didn't just exchange genes, they exchanged cognition. The transmission of architectural and astronomical knowledge from a non-sapiens hominin would completely shatter the Great Leap Forward model, which insists that advanced thought emerged only within our own lineage. In the preprint, Dr. Korkmaz draws a chilled connection between the Göbekli ghost and the enigmatic population that left its mark in Aboriginal Australians and Papuans, peoples whose ancestors may have encountered another wave of these beings along the coast of South Asia. The match isn't perfect, but it's statistically significant enough to suggest a third major archaic interbreeding event in human history, one centered in West Asia, happening not hundreds of thousands of years ago, but right on the eve of civilization. The pillars of Göbekli Tepe become a stone testament to a final, desperate burst of cross-species collaboration, a cognitive handshake between two kinds of human. And then there's the memory held by the people who still live in the shadow of that hill. When you ask local elders in the region, they don't talk about primitive hunter-gatherers. In the Kurdish Dengbej singing tradition, and in the earliest Sumerian cuneiform texts, there are stories of the Shining Ones, beings with bright eyes who came from the mountains and taught humanity the secrets of stone, the stars, and the seasons. The Sumerians called them Anunnaki. And if you read certain passages of the book of Genesis through a new lens, you might call them the Nephilim, the sons of God, who took human wives and passed on forbidden knowledge. The original name of Göbekli Tepe is Gyre-Marazin, the hill of the sacred ones. Priests in Hain, the oldest continuously inhabited city on Earth, maintain an oral tradition that speaks of a pre-Adamite race of wise beings who taught them the secrets of the ziggurat before being swallowed by the earth. Now, I'm not saying these myths are literal history, but I am asking, could a 12,000-year-old biological encounter have survived as legend, dressing up the reality of cross-species contact in the robes of gods? The DNA doesn't lie in the lab. The legend might just be the garbled, poetic memory of our own hybrid birth, a story told around fires since the day those pillars first stood. Now we come to the part that makes many researchers deeply uncomfortable. Some scholars, examining this data, cannot help but note the parallels to the Genesis account of the Watchers, non-human intelligences who descended, intermingled with humanity, and sparked a revolution of culture that was seen as corrupting. I'm not here to preach theology, but we have to ask, did a real, non-sapiens hominin generate our most persistent myths of divine teachers? Were the ancient gods simply a separate branch of consciousness, one our ancestors met in the flesh? There's also a more grounded, but equally revolutionary, possibility. The ghost lineage might have been an offshoot of Homo erectus that survived in the refugia of Anatolia and developed complex cognitive abilities parallel to our own. On the brink of extinction, this dying people poured their astronomical and architectural knowledge into early Homo sapiens communities, accelerating our rise. The pillars are a palimpsest, a genetic and cultural testament left by a species that knew it was fading and chose to gift its flame to a younger cousin. I asked Dr. Clive Fenton, a Cambridge geneticist who reviewed the preprint, about this directly. He stared at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "If this holds, we are not simply the children of Africa. We're the children of Africa plus something else, something the Ice Age locked away and that Göbekli Tepe unlocked." He would not elaborate on camera. That silence, in a world of academic noise, is a scream in the dark. So let's connect the threads. Point 1. Inside the limestone of the world's first temple, we found DNA that belongs to no known human, a ghost species that touched those stones 12,000 years ago. Point 2. That genetic material wasn't randomly scattered. It was ritually concentrated inside the mouths of carved animals and strange symbols that some believe represent cosmic knowledge. Point 3. Every ancient culture born in this region preserved a memory of luminous beings who brought the secrets of civilization. These myths are not pure fantasy. They're the distorted echo of a real, biological cross-cultural exchange, a moment when our ancestors looked into the face of a different mind. The massive, sobering implication is this. The birth of civilization was not a solo act. It was a conversation. Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a ceremonial center. It was a genetic library, a deliberate, self-conscious attempt by a vanishing people to write their essence into the future, a message in stone that we're only now, 12 millennia later, beginning to decode. We are the inheritors of a hidden lineage. The question is no longer whether we share this planet's story with another mind. The question is, what else did they leave buried, waiting for a generation that would finally dare to look? And that's why this investigation doesn't end here. Before you go, if you want to dig deeper into mysteries the textbooks never told you about, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Because next time, we're going deep into the Amazon rainforest, following the trails of that same ghost genetic signature. We'll visit a living tribe whose DNA carries a marker that should never have crossed the ocean, yet it's there. And what we uncovered in that jungle, it should not be possible. So I'll leave you with this. The stones are not mute. They've been singing for 12,000 years, waiting for ears that could hear the difference. Now we're finally listening. I'll see you in the comments and in the next investigation.